Mic check. Hi, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People. Hi, friends. The internet television program that's always on. Is it really always on, Eric? Most of the time. Okay, so hi, welcome to Talking with Famous People. My name's host Eric, and today I'd like to talk about the YT typology community and the importance of having a YT community update. Which means what, Eric? Well, kind of that I'm probably going to complain some more. Probably. But more importantly, I got an interesting email. I've gotten a few interesting emails recently, and I haven't checked my emails in a few days. So if you're trying to get in contact with me and you're wondering where I've been, why I'm not contacting anybody, why I'm not responding to anything, it's because it's Sleepy Week, or it was for a few days there, and I was devoid of enthusiasm for dealing with shit. And as a consequence, I've been not dealing with anything. You know how that goes. Anyway, I've received an interesting email from NT somewhere, and I kind of want to make a video in which I quote part of it and make a video about it, which might be called "I Blame Frank James." So NT somewhere points out that part of the reason why people are so enamored of wrong things is that Frank James at some point either tacitly or explicitly endorsed DSP and or CSJ, was being a community person, rather than a exclusivity person, and which is a smart way to go in general. And but I think unfortunately it's led to some general misinformation taking root across the board. I think the most important thing to note about typology is that to be a type is to have your dominant and second functions imply your relationships with all your other functions. Hi, Judith. Oh, yes, I'm fine. I saw your email. Like, I didn't read it, but I saw it in my notifications and ignored it. Because when I'm in Sleepy Week, I'm just really feeling like, I don't want to do anything. Everything sounds hard. Anyhow, so the basic problem with cognitive functions, as people understand them, is they keep mistaking the map for the territory, or thinking the map can be controlling, which it ultimately can't be, right? The map is okay. Yeah, I'll type him. Sure, whatever. Did you email me about it? I just haven't checked my email. It's like when people talk about a function independent of its slot, they're typically talking about it as it might express in the dominant slot. So if I say, well, SI is meow, I mean, when we're talking about matters of these sorts, we can refer to them using the term SI, right? But like being an NE DOM is the same thing as being 4th slot SI, is the same thing as being 5th slot NI, is the same thing as being 8th slot SE. They're just different ways of describing the same thing. So in other words, because I'm an NE DOM, I necessarily have, it implies, certain relationships with these other approaches to attention. They have to be deprioritized or arranged in conjunction with my dominant nature, and that's what it means to have a cognitive function stack. So it's like, it's not conceivable to be an NE DOM that's not NI ignoring, nor is it conceivable to be an NE DOM that's not SI fourth, because being an NE DOM is defined as being SI fourth and NI ignoring. It's the things that are implied by being an NE DOM, along with the 8th slot function, right? So there's an implied relationship with my sensory functions that's necessarily the case because and by virtue of being an intuition DOM, right? It means I'm using mapping functions instead of experiential functions, and I am not very attentive to my sensory functions in general. We could all use a little more SI in our lives. I could. That's for sure. But I have I gotta say, I have a very gratifying time talking to my client's mom, the mom of that client's family. She consults me about a lot of stuff with her kids, and I appreciate that. I value that. It's like I value having my opinion valued, and boy, Jeffrey is one impressive ENTP. He's got this business going and is stressing his mom out, but it's like, yeah, but it's like how many high school sophomores put together this? He's got this business basically selling keyboards or something, like not like this kind of keyboard, like, but for gamers. He gets the components and assembles them, I think, and he like. He's just an impressive kid, and so is his little sister. His little sister's really impressive too. Like, I get frustrated with her when she doesn't pick up the logic that I'm teaching like instantly. But I got to remember, a lot of college students struggle with this, and she's a 7th grader, so. She's not struggling with it. That's the thing. She's not struggling with it at all. She's getting it really quickly. She's just, sometimes it's like, I guess I'm just asking a little too much of her. Like, I'll go, listen, the whole point of disjunctive syllogism is this. If you've got two objects, be they statements or be they expressions, and they are separated by an or, and you have the negation of one of those objects, you get the other object. What is so difficult to understand about that? I yell at this poor child because she doesn't get shit like that I say, That's the thing about logic. And people go, well, how do you know, Eric, that TI connects with conditional logic? Well, one reason we know is that we can see the difference between ENFPs and ENTPs, or that we can take a collection of NE DOMs and note that half of them will be excellent in this and half of them will be terrible. Not half, but probably there's a lot more ENFPs than ENTPs. But the thing is, we note that all the individuals in the set of NE DOMs will fall into one of two very distinct categories, right? So if we want our attentional model to account for this, if we don't, then we're missing something dramatically important because it's a key piece of data that shows that we're onto something significant here, Oliver Linehan reports that so-called rational typology says it's not possible that just alpha and beta quadra, the TI, be linked to logical reasoning, because then the other quadras wouldn't be capable of logical. I mean, all the ENTPs will be excellent. They'll be, all the NE DOMs will either be excellent at TI or very bad at it. That's the truth, for sure. But not half. I agree that the half is wrong, because not half of them will be ENTPs. Much smaller than half will be ENTPs. So the thing is, it's basically true that delta and gamma quadras don't use logical reasoning as a default attentional manner. It's not that they're incapable of it. It just means that when asked to use it, depending on which function slot it's in, they're going to be more or less capable of demonstrating it, But it is the case that they're not going to approach decision making and manage their own lives according to consistency of justification as expressed in language. It just is the case, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. The agent is a semantic concept distinct from the subject of a sentence as well as from the topic. Where did you read that? Whereas the subject is determined syntactically. I mean, the thing is, we can frame it like that. Where did you get that from? Because that's one frame of reference. But the point that I'm making is that grammar is somehow inadequate because it doesn't actually account for the distinction between agency and subjectiveness. In other words, taking action in the world, being a subject in the world, or versus being an observer. I'm curious where you quoted that from, because it's wrong, but it's very interestingly wrong. You know, it's like it's missing the cart, it's missing the forest for the trees, because indeed, it's right, but that's not expressing, that's not telling us anything except a limitation of language that we found. It's not telling us anything more than that, and it's wrong to draw further. It's wrong to draw the conclusions that they're drawing there. So, you found something very interesting regardless. What do you know? Agent, object, subject, and that wiki came up. So, yes, you can certainly make that argument that it's semantically distinct, and I would agree that it's semantically distinct, and that part of the confusion that we have in language is that we don't account for it linguistically. So, would ENTJs tend to have better TI than ESTJs? Because NI is subjective and NI is objective and SI is subjective. I don't know. I would suggest that neither of them is prone to thinking justifications ultimately matter except as means to other ends. So as a consequence, you're not going to see either of them using a lot of TI justifications unless pressed to do so. Eric, you've talked before about how taking in a lot of information is exhausting for you and you have to need to recharge. Any tips on dealing with this sort of information burnout? If I said that, I know what I was talking about. It's not this kind of the kind of information that's exhausting for me is like going to Disneyland. Taking in a lot of stimulus information, like sensory information, is exhausting to me. Taking in a lot of non-sensory information is not exhausting to me. It's very easy. And the solution for me is to withdraw from the sensory data. I get exhausted by going to a museum. I get exhausted by going to Disneyland. I get exhausted by things that require me to use my eyes a lot. Basically, I get tired by driving. I don't like to use my eyes except to read information. It's like that's what my eyes are for. No DMT today. The thing about it is this. I'll tell you what. This is what my takeaway from. Because here's the thing. It turns out that Rachel and I were kind of doing it wrong. We didn't have the thing charged enough. When we charged it all the way one morning, and we both hit it pretty hard, we had what I guess you'd call a breakthrough experience. It was rather categorically different, and of course I'm not that into hit. It's pretty intense for a little while. However, what I concluded is that because I went through a period of about half an hour or so maybe where I was in this weird ultra state of like guru calm feel good. Rachel and I were kind of standing outside on the deck and it was like, it felt like what you'd imagine enlightenment to feel like, right? But here's the thing I noted, and this is important. You can't get something without giving something up. Because I had to poop before I did it, and I just completely had no awareness of needing to poop throughout the entire experience, right? And then at the end, I started getting my SI back. I had to sacrifice my knowledge function, SI, in order to attain that state of NI, knowledge engagement. You can, and there's never any time that you don't have a trade-off like that in typology and cognition and attention. So it's like, yeah, I can do a drug that puts me in a really NI state of being, but there is a sacrifice. So if you imagine these sort of enlightened gurus people, well, they're all extremely constipated because they're not paying any attention to their bodies at all. Well, neither SI nor SE is really subjective, okay? Look, the only functions that are truly subjective or objective are TI and FI, because that's assuming we're defining it as a disinterested or interested calculus, which is how most people mean the terms. Now, when we're talking about NI being objective, we mean that we know things about the objects in the world, not we know things from our experience. So if I know that I don't like to go to Disneyland because I've been to Disneyland before, that's knowing things from my experience. If I know that I don't like to go to Disneyland because I don't like Disney or something like that, that's not an SI thing. That's an NI kind of frame of reference. Now, the thing is, if you think about ideation on a spectrum, you could think of it from a spectrum of a very concise, expressing very precise information very concisely on one end, and therefore not saying very much. On the other end, you can think of somebody saying a whole shit ton of words to say very little, or to say so much that you can't even keep track of it all, right? So we can understand ideation as falling on these spectrums. We can understand understanding as having to link to that as well. So it's like, for me to understand something, I'm going to have a way of processing language that helps me to understand things either better when they're coalesced, or things that or if you're like me, you can process a bunch of uncoalesced language very quickly. But, well, TE, listen, so TE and FE are both ways of handshaking the objective and the subjective. In other words, you subjectively know you want your refrigerator to work, so you deal with its objective logic in order to fix the thing, okay? And with FE, I recognize that these people subjectively feel like this, and it's going to impact their behavior, so I adjust accordingly to make them feel different and behave differently, okay? So I check the object again, just as I do with TE. In both instances, you check the object to see if it's consistent with what you want. So there's a constant relationship between what you want and what reality is. It's a checking between the subjective and the objective for both FE and TE. For NI and SI, it's a knowledge and intuition of the self about how things are in the world, or it's a knowledge of the self as to how you've related to things in the past that dominates your way of knowing things. Now, you might say that NI therefore is more objective, and you'd be right in that regard, but I'd rather we limit the use of the terms to meaning interested and disinterested calculus, because that's what people mostly mean when they're talking about objective and subjective. In other words, is this controlled by the interests of the party who's doing the decision making or not? So processing language, like the reason I process language so quickly and tend to process language before anything else, in other words, I read every sign everywhere we go. I'm always reading all of the words that cross in my frame of reference. As a consequence, I'm not necessarily paying attention to other stuff that's physically in the world, right? As much. So, it's exemplified by sometimes I'll be in the car and talking and I'll miss an exit or something. That would be an example of me paying so much attention to the words that are in the field of experience, namely the words coming out of my mouth, that I'm not paying attention to what exit I need to get off on. That's both an SI and an SE attentional deficit that's implied by my attentional habits and my attentional nature. It's not a different function in that regard, you know? It's like these functions are all on separate continuums, and where you are in your relationship between them is the expression of the cognitive function stack. INTPs process it even faster than me. Yeah, that's correct. Now, I would suggest as well, there's no itinerary, but there are a few topics I want to talk about. I would suggest as well that I probably process, well, you know, I'm not sure if this is the case or not. It may be the case that all INTPs process language just as fast as I do. And that all INTPs process it a little faster. So that very well may be the case. When I type real INTPs and I'm confident that they're INTPs, there's never any delay, no matter what we're saying to each other, to understanding each other. And with almost every other type, there's a need to repeat things in other words, to say like, in other words, blah, 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 in other words, blah, 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 to explain things, right? But when I'm talking to other NTPs, INTPs or ENTPs, it's never the case that we have to have things re-explained unless we weren't listening, you know? Well, so Michelle, the answer is missing your exit because you're too caught up in a conversation you're talking to yourself about. Well, in this case, I would be talking to Rachel. I wouldn't be talking to myself. But regardless, it would be both an NE thing and an SI thing and an SE thing. In other words, my relationship with extroverted intuition means I am not paying very much attention to keeping track of where I'm going, means I'm not paying very much attention to actually executing those plans because I'm off here mapping about something unrelated to what I'm doing, right? So I'm talking about why Delilah is like this and Mia is like that when I'm driving somewhere over here to doing something unrelated to what I'm talking about, right? Being an extroverted intuitor means that's my default state of being, is that I'm talking about stuff that's not related to what I'm actually doing right now. And that means I'm not paying that much attention to what I'm actually doing right now. Spencer Jones, please don't tell me this shit. It's like, do not kill yourself. Okay? Do not harm yourself at all in any way. Do not threaten to do so. Do not do that. And don't put it on me either. It's like I do not want to hear this shit. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't tell me it's true that you're going to do it. Don't. Stop. Call me. You know, it's like, what the hell are you doing? It's like, don't, you know. I mean, Spencer Jones, when you come out and say this shit, you're creating a necessary kind of response. You know, I'm not going to sit back and encourage it, tacitly accept it, be okay with it at all, no matter what. And so call me, you know. If you need to call me for fuck's sake. Or call me. Don't listen to Nina. It's like, you know. I mean, obviously having this conversation is necessary. There are lots of things that are necessary. You're not killing yourself is necessary. No, I don't want a copy. I don't want you to do it. Stop. Call me. I don't know how I'm supposed to deal with this, but obviously I can't let you go through with this. Well, I mean, if I'm getting it post-mortem, why? There's no point. You said nothing's necessary, right? I don't want it post-mortem. I only want it if you promise me you're not going to do it. I don't think so, Absinthe. I mean, I don't think that counts as trolling. That just counts as, oh, I'm only going to read it if you promise me you're not going to kill yourself. Otherwise, I won't read it. Fuck no. No way. I don't think he's trolling either. But if you promise me that you won't do it, I'll read it. If you promise me you won't do it. Otherwise, I won't read it. I'll throw it away immediately upon receipt. If you want me to read it, you got to promise me you're not going to do it. Well, the fact that he doesn't want to give it suggests that it means something to him. You know? How would you recommend I deal with this, Mac Daddy? I don't know. It wasn't on my agenda for today, obviously. I don't know what your reasons are. I have no idea. I didn't try to blame it on depression. I didn't say you were depressed. When did I say you were depressed? Hi, Brenna Lee. I definitely made no such claims. Well, I'm not society. I mean, I don't know if my reaction's fucked up or not. I don't know how to respond to this. You know, I know enough that I oppose it. I've had somebody I know commit suicide before, and it's haunted me ever since. And it was terrible. And it's like, it was awful. I mean, it's an awful reality still. Something that the living carry with them forever. You know, maybe that's what the deceased wants, but it impacts people they probably never dreamed it would impact. And it impacts them maybe significantly. Like I hadn't seen the guy much in quite a while, but I'm not saying that either. I didn't say that either. So I'm just saying all I can do is respond by saying don't do it, and consider the significance of the impacts. The worst of all, of course, you eliminate any possibility of ever choosing anything else again. So it's like if there's that little hope, if life's so filled with despair, then go do something crazy, you know? But you're preserve the ability to make further choices. Live to fight another day. Tomorrow's a new day, Spencer Jones. Listen, things can change on a dime. It's like Rachel was stuck in a really bad place for a full decade, and all of a sudden her life switched 180 degrees, and it's been entirely different for the last 2 years. I mean, I've had similar things. I was a drunk for a long time, and when I finally quit drinking for real, everything changed 180 degrees. Well, Spencer Jones, sometimes bad shit persists for a while, and yet it is still also the case that shit can change on a dime. I mean, I think you gotta have faith. Really, will help. Faith is incredibly liberating, especially for NTPs or maybe STPs. I'm not sure. Faith is incredibly liberating because it allows you to delegate things you can't figure out to something that you don't have to figure out. Yeah, everything's temporary. Is right. This too shall pass, you know? Even if it doesn't feel like it's ever gonna pass. Well, circumstances change, sometimes beyond for reasons that are totally out of nowhere, you know?
I reached out to you and things changed.
Right. Rachel reached out to me and things changed.
Yeah, maybe this is the first step in something like that.
Well, have you ever had this conversation before, Spencer Jones? I don't think so. This is different.
Not within reason. My life totally changed.
Well, I mean, look, the point is, right. There's hubris in presuming that you can predict the future that well, too. It's like, who knows what the universe has in store for you. It's okay. They should decided to share this here. It may not have been my choice, but I'd rather share it here than someplace I have less control over how the response goes. You know. No. Flo, don't say that shit.
No, it's not.
Don't. He's just like being a dick. Yeah. The thing is, things aren't insurmountable. Things are surmountable. And I know the last thing that you need right now is somebody shaming you. So I'm not kicking you out. I don't think anybody's kicking you out. I think probably YouTube is censoring you. But you know. The thing is, if you really are an INTP, I don't doubt that your problems link somewhat to being SE polar and having trouble taking impactful actions is part of what comes along with being SE polar, you know. Well, flow state. Spencer Jones has indicated a desire to end things. 43 times in psych ward. 43 times in a psych ward. That's a lot of times in a psych ward. What are you diagnosed with? Well, I agree therapy is useless. If you have a real mental illness, therapy is useless because you need the right drug combination. But I believe it's called 5150. Worst part of being smart is you always know what happens next. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, people think they want to be smart, insightful, intuitive, whatever. It's a pain in the ass being on any end of the bell curve, right? It's a pain in the ass because, you know, it's like, what does it mean to be an outlier? It means to be more correct about most things than just about everybody, and for them not to get that and push back sometimes in ways that are frustrating. You know, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this live stream, was the frustration of like, you know, presenting things as clearly as I can and still getting a lot of pushback. Or there just generally not being any consensus that the right way of understanding it is the right way of understanding it. So that can be frustrating for me. And I understand that it's probably even more frustrating for INTPs. But the thing is, the world needs us. It needs us to do our duty. Duty is heavier than a mountain, right? But don't listen to the Japanese. Death is permanent. You didn't ruin the live stream, you just turned it into something else. You know, it's like, I've been having a lot of bad feelings lately related to guilt and or something like that, related somewhat to Rachel's family, related to my own family, my dad, and how challenging it can be for me to, I guess, be a good son. Stuff like that. Feelings are hard. I mean, it's weird. It's like feelings with Rachel, super easy. Feelings with Delilah, super easy. Because we're talking 6th and 7th slot. Feelings with my dad, it's hard. It's like he wants me to be the one who feels. He's got this fourth slot FI. He wants me to have wants and stuff. I mean, it should be everything that I'm seeing is popping up on the screen on the live stream too. So I don't know, Spencer Jones. I don't know what's going on with you. But when you talk about the kind of things you talk about here, then I'm sure the YouTube algorithm is delravedly so. I don't know what that word means. Is that a word, delravedly? Yeah, I'm an ENTP. It's well, because you can see it on the ones you can see it in your own live chat thing, but you can also see it on the screen because I've got it up on the screen as a window. I mean, it may be selfish, but it's like the biggest problem with it isn't an FE problem. It's that the most precious thing you have, Spencer Jones, is your life. It's by far the most precious thing you'll ever have. And it's something you never ever want to throw away. Once you lose your life, you've lost everything you've ever had, everything you ever will have, everything you've ever been, everything you ever will be. Every experience you've ever had, every experience you ever will have. Every high, every low. All gone. Forever. I mean, the point is, it being selfish is of secondary concern ultimately to the fact that you just don't want to throw away the single maximally precious thing that enables everything else. It's a necessary precondition to all good, Yes, it may be a necessary precondition to all suffering as well. David Hume can fucking suck it. He's just a fucking TI user. You've got to find a core value in your FI that supplants the logics of systems, that supplants the logics of language, that supplants the realities of experience even. Well, have you watched all of my videos yet, Spencer Jones? If not, you still have a lot of school to go. Addiction took your success away. Are you sober now? I mean, the thing is, if you're not sober, then you have to get sober first. It's like, otherwise, you're just not even giving yourself. It's like you're quitting before you even try. How old are you? You're almost 2 years sober? Are you completely sober? Okay. So, I mean, it seems weird that you wouldn't go off the wagon before you killed yourself. Right? It seems like if you're gonna throw it all away and you're an addict, then you know how to do that. We know how to properly throw everything away. It doesn't involve any violence or harm to ourselves. So, I mean, the other thing is, I don't necessarily think that complete sobriety is a good idea for people who have a problem with specific drugs. So I had a problem with alcohol, and I've been sober from alcohol now for, I don't even know, I can't really remember the number of years. It's like 6 or 7 or something. Um, but I didn't quit doing everything. Like earlier today, Rachel and I cashed a 50 box of Whippets. It's just, you know.
Like, honestly, it's so unpredictable. Like, there's times where I'm, like, hitting it and I'm like, woo! And then there's times when it's just like...
Weak sauce chugaboo?
Yeah.
I wonder if we should get Whippet brand Whippets. Okay, well, I mean, my point being that if you had a problem with one intoxicant, it may be the case that you're best served not to quit all intoxicants. I'm not sure this is the case for everybody. It certainly was for me. If I required, yeah, they're like the off-brand Whippets. Yes, there is something wrong with it, Spencer Jones. That's where you get into the selfish part. But the thing is, like, at least do mushrooms. Mushrooms will make you feel better. Yeah, I like mushrooms a lot.
I've never done mushrooms, and I would like to try with Eric.
I know that every time I do mushrooms, after I come down from them, I feel like, oh, I've been stressing too much. I've been feeling this dread and stuff and worry and Spencer Jones, I don't have a solution for you. I have an advocacy that says don't kill yourself. I don't have a solution for you. I mean, at least call me first. If there's no solution, then killing yourself is no solution. Just because you can't solve a problem doesn't mean it can't be solved. Maybe you need to reach out to some people who are smart. You know? You can talk to me.
Yeah.
I never had that experience the other day in TJ. I always like them. I kind of like them sometimes. You know, it's like I'd rather do them by myself than around the wrong people. Spencer Jones, I actually hadn't even thought about that until you said it. Now that you said it, I guess I would probably feel obligated to, but that was never my intention. I didn't think you were gonna call me and I was gonna report you to anybody. I'm actually arrogant enough to figure I could do a better job of talking to you than anybody else.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess now that you mentioned that, if we couldn't attain agreement about the decision to not do that, or at least to put it off till some other day and make the decision again later, then I guess I would be obligated to call somebody. regardless, there's no hurry, right? What's the hurry?
Well, what are the circumstances? That's the thing.
Okay. I mean, talking doesn't solve circumstances, but sometimes other people do. And talking to them is the only way to include them in the process. I mean, if you really have bad circumstances, maybe you need to talk to as many people as possible about these bad circumstances and see if anybody can yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there are people who actually have TE in their dominant stack here right now. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 seconds ago. That's a good quote. I like it.
I like that too.
Because of all the harm it does. You want to join me? Sure. Let me open up a room. So the thing is, Taylor, I do want to point out, it's probably not going to be very useful to scold him into meowing, you know, which I know is probably going to be your tendency because you can be a little bit scoldy sometimes. So I am currently in autonomy, if you'd like to join me. Let me bring this up. Piao. And let me bring this up. Piao. The Japanese romanticize it. That's for sure. But it's really a bad thing. It's all bad.
Yeah, it's all bad.
There's no whatever even good you might think you might be getting out of it is false. It's not. There's nothing. It's all bad. It's not wrong to jump from a burning building. It depends how high up you are, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't jump from a burning building if the fall was going to kill me. I would try to run through the flames. I kind of like what Tristan's saying here is, you know, it's the thing we need to remember is he's being selfish in the right way right now, which is he's actually talking to us about it rather than doing it. that doesn't make it okay or good. You're conflating reason with normative considerations. The community update now is dealing with this stuff. Hi, Taylor. Are you there? Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
Margaret, I've seen what you've been up to. And I can read your thoughts, and that's some fucked up.
So, life is all we know, most fear death. So the thought that someone would deliberately kill themselves, I think, is mind-blowing to others, and they fear for them. Well, I mean, it's not entirely mind-blowing to me because I've had somebody in my life who I wasn't particularly close with, but a childhood friend who, when he was around 30 or so, killed himself, and it was very traumatic for me. So I feel like I understand that even for people who aren't especially close, it's extremely traumatic.
Yeah, I've been around enough of them to have, honestly, a bit of animosity towards them. If you haven't noticed, I've been around two successful ones, and when I was in college, I saved one chick in the middle of an attempt, actually, and she's still alive.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, that's good.
She didn't change her mind. She didn't go, fuck, man, I was almost there.
Yeah. So.
They're just gross. I've seen the aftermath. I've seen families, seen kids, seen parents. It's just, if you haven't been around it, and that's kind of why I'm so intolerant with it, because I've seen this before, like, people try to be sympathetic, and what they end up doing is soft padding something that's really, like, blatantly wrong. If you have a single person who cares about you, if you got a fucking dog, it's wrong and it's selfish. And so I try to offset that. What I view as misplaced good intention.
Well, I mean, if somebody's in a moment of actual crisis, which I suspect this individual is, in the sense that it becomes kind of irrelevant what's correct, and it's just a matter of what the obligation is, I guess. It's not wrong, you're wrong. Okay, well, I mean, no, Taylor's right that it's morally wrong. If in fact you were to follow through on that, everybody here, if they come to understand that it happened, is going to feel like they own some of that, Certainly I will. So in that regard, it's morally wrong, he's right. But as I said already, that's not why you shouldn't kill yourself.
It's also mathematically wrong.
Maybe it is. I'm not.
I mean, okay. I'm just thinking about it this way: if your life is an asset, which any slave owner would say at the most base level it is, right? You can affect some sort of change with it. What would you do with this asset? Would you go, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not picking it up. No, at its most raw utility level, you could hurl yourself towards, I don't know, planting trees in the rainforest, or whatever it is that.
I mean, Spencer Jones put it this way: for it not to be morally wrong for you now, you'd have to convince us all that in fact you are at the tail end of some sort of horrible body-eating disease. You'd have to tell us a lot about your circumstances to convince us that in fact this is one of those rare exceptions. There are some rare exceptions that most philosophers agree justify anyone's own life, but let's say you were to win the argument and to say that your suffering justifies it. why would that make it a better thing for you to do? Again, you're missing the point. Your life is the most precious and only truly, ultimately precious thing you have. Everything else is predicated on it. And it's a permanent answer to that eliminates you from ever having any more questions or answers. Okay, well, then in this case, you have to accept the moral status because it is what it is based on that. Based on the fact that you made us aware of it without convincing us that it was legitimate, then you got to accept the moral status.
Or jump in autonomy. I don't know if you feel like doing that, but here, I'll have this.
Okay, well, Spencer Jones, the thing is,
do you have a mom?
I would point out, Spencer Jones, that right now you're talking to me, so I know you're not suffering right now because it's an absolute joy to talk to me.
It's true.
So there's that. Look at this. You want to forsake this? Oops, sorry, kitty. There you are. Do you want to forsake that beautiful thing? That's a cat. Do you want to be in a universe without any cats? Again, David Hume can suck it. Okay? It's like, when I was in high school, I sometimes wrote articles under the pen name of Hume because I was such a fan of David Hume. But, that's just us wanking off in our cognitive function stack. He's wrong about the value of human beings.
You were totally wanking.
When? Who? Where? Why?
You were wanking Hume off. You were wanking Hume off.
I was wanking myself off, comparing myself to him.
Oh no,
I was a high school student. What can I tell you? I was a dork.
I don't know the mechanics of it. I just know it's gay.
Well, I do have multiple homosexual-esque components to me, including.
I'm such a fucking. I don't even know who David Hume is.
He's a philosopher.
That's why.
He's a very T-I-N-E philosopher. The thing is, I was also a big fan of Bertrand Russell back then. Of course, if you collapse everything down into T-I-N-E, then you get some nice, compact little arguments and shit, but you're ignoring the reality that ultimately, who you are and the opportunity to be is more important than anything else. Well, but you have too much potential in front of you. You're 32 years old. You're not at the end of life facing a terminal disease that meowity meowity meow. Why am I taking DMT? Or am I trying to get anything out of it? I recognize it for what it is. It's just a drug. It doesn't teach you anything. Didn't teach me anything. Everything I knew on it, I knew already. I maybe knew it with more clarity, but to the extent that I did so, it was at the sacrifice of some other kind of knowing. So I had to basically, DMT made me sacrifice all of my sensory body stuff, all my SI stuff. Like, I really had to poo before I did a bunch of it, and then I didn't. Pooing was not anywhere on my mind, right, for a long time. So that's the thing about it, is to the extent that it does give you, put you more in an NI state of being, it's at the expense of some other attentional manner necessarily, because that's how attentional manners work. In other words, there is no such thing as an enlightened guru, because you couldn't ever possibly sustain that state of being indefinitely without sacrificing too much of what it means to be human. I think I make a good therapist.
I think so too.
I don't think I'm being a bad therapist.
No, you're being a good therapist.
It's funny that Artie doesn't think I make a good therapist. Well, you're having your interpersonal needs met right now, Spencer Jones. You needed tonight for a bunch of people to pay attention to you and the fact that you're suffering and you feel stuck. And we are doing that.
28. Where else can you go and get 28 people pay attention to your irresolvable problems?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is,
20 people.
I am often, it's true enough, not live streaming these days like I used to. But it's nevertheless the case that there should be, I would like there to be more opportunities for people in the community to engage, like premieres and stuff. Rachel and I are planning to do a few type polices coming up pretty quick. And, you know, it's fun. It's fun around here. At least this is fun. At least this will entertain you for a minute or two, you know? And there's something to be said for that. We will eventually have a meetup. It'll give you an opportunity to actually come meet up with us. If in fact it's like you really want to do that and are struggling to make that happen or something, we can maybe find you get a ride with somebody, or, you know, various things we can do, you know? Well, it's fine. You needed it tonight, Spencer Jones, so that's fine. ISFPs need art and sex therapy. Spencer Jones, are you an ISFP? No. So you probably don't need art and sex therapy. You probably need... It probably wouldn't kill you to get an ESTP to drag you out to do some shit, you know? They are your supervisor type.
And even studies have found that, what was it? There's a study they did on depression, and when a group had to take, there were three different things. Like one was taking the pills, one was going to group therapy, and one was one-on-one talk therapy. And they found that just the act of leaving the house and going to the meeting, even if it was canceled and they just turned around and came right back home, was equally as effective as all the treatments combined. So, truly, SE is the solution to all of your problems.
So, you have a girlfriend, Spencer Jones? Weren't you just telling me how you had no capacity to engage socially? Ay. I guess I am struggling. Meritocracy is kind of a myth, to a point. The problem is INTPs in general need some manager-style person to say, here, focus your intelligence and attention on me. And that's hard to find. But if you really want to experience meritocracy in action, Spencer Jones, and you really are an INTP, you should go apprentice yourself, or what do they call that? Be a... I forget what it's called. But be one of those people who works for a debate coach to learn how to coach debate. As an INTP, you're naturally well equipped to actually succeed as a debate coach and make better cases than other coaches and actually get to see meritocracy in action. I got to see it in action as a debate coach, and I really had never seen it in action prior to that before. It's a real thing, and it's pretty awesome. And it's certainly within your capacity to do it. Well, I mean, if you've got time to have this big conversation about this, then you could have put a couple hours into helping out at a debate school locally and learning the craft, you know. I can share with you all my resources if you'd like. So you've got a job, you've got a girlfriend. I mean, it's a lot more than a lot of people can say. I wish I had a job. You know, that'd be great. Rachel and I right now are out of weed, and when we go to the weed store later, we're probably just gonna get an eighth of weed because we're so broke right now. So,
I don't want to call the bank.
what is
Hey,
it?
if he's, I'm looking at the chat here. If he's got a plumbing license, there's so much fucking plumbing work out there. Just go solo.
Plumb your little heart out.
Dude, plumbers make fucking good money.
Yeah, they do.
I wouldn't want to do it forever, but if you're 32, right now especially, that's some good cash in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and looking, I'd say look if you're a licensed plumber, looking for somebody to hire you is the wrong way of going about it.
Is that good for SE paper?
Yeah, you don't want to do it forever. Like I said, I wouldn't want to do it forever either, but it's a great skill set to have. Everybody's always going to need plumbing. It's a skilled service, and it pays pretty fucking well in the scheme of
And it'll allow
skills.
you to save up some money and then transition to do something else, you know?
Who gives a fuck? Those people
you have
probably
to,
make less than you do.
and you have to look forward in time. You can't just look in the immediate future. You have to actually have a bit of a plan, you know? It's like if you're not... well before you get to the point of wanting to off yourself, you should try having a plan, right?
Bro, listen, doctors spend like four times the amount of time in school. They come out saddled with debt. And residency, yeah, no, forget it. I think plumbers are smarter than, I think being a plumber is a better career choice than being a doctor, especially right now. Fuck that shit.
There you go, Puddin'. Thanks, Brenna Lee. Brenna Lee's gonna help us get a little bit of weed. Thank you, appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
Oh, thank you. I was even thinking about that.
Types with SE7 sabotage themselves and others through not engaging with SE when not doing well. That sounds right.
If you're a plumber and you're in the KC metro area, I'll do the SE for you for cut. So.
I mean,
So there's one problem.
there are a lot of people who would kill for a good job like plumbing, you know, just because you don't like it. I mean,
It could be, your job could be holding a sign up at the exit.
right. Or you're
Not party. No.
okay. My coffee's ready. I'm making my cup of coffee right now. Okay, so Spencer Jones, let me explain to you exactly why it's important to stay alive. If you weren't alive, you wouldn't be able to hear this song about you and your problems. Oh,
I
Spencer
love this
Jones, just stay alive. Don't die. Then we'd say why you didn't explain enough nor justify, and that makes us have to cry. So stay alive, Spencer Jones, stay alive. Don't let your brittle bones turn to stones and say Bly, no Spencer Jones, stay alive. There.
That was beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, it wasn't my best song ever, but that's why you have to stay alive, because my best song ever is still coming, right? Yeah, it's still to come. I haven't made it yet. And if you were to miss out on that, why, everything would suck forever. Okay. So here's the thing. I think that I kind of want to wrap it up and go to the weed store because it's almost 8 o'clock and it's Sunday. They probably close at 9 on Sunday.
Don't forget your mask.
Don't forget my mask. The weed store.
Don't forget your vaccination and your booster shot and your card to prove it.
Well, right now we just have to wear a mask. So, and the thing is, not every store makes you wear a mask. It's like, it's haphazard. I never know whether I have to wear it or not. It depends on the store. So, you know, it's like everyone's kind of the same way. It's like everyone's, okay, are you expecting me to wear a mask? Am I expecting you to wear a mask? And it's like, it's a fucking nightmare. It's ridiculous. Anyway, okay, so I want to thank you all for being here. I'd like to especially thank Spencer Jones for introducing us to such a dark topic, and Taylor for joining me here in the autonomy room and offering his thoughts of wisdom as well. Also, special thanks.
What was the original announcement, though? I missed it.
There wasn't really. I didn't really get a chance to talk about the topic really much. And also,
you did it in like 2 seconds. Is it actually an announcement?
Well, one of my announcements is blame Frank James, because he's the one who sort of tacitly endorsed Dave's superpowers and C.S. Joseph back in the day, and that he may be somewhat responsible for people believing in them. That was one of my messages. But I got that message from somebody.
That sounds like its own video. That sounds like 2 videos.
Yeah, well, I agree. It does sound like its own video. But I also had some other things I was going to talk about regarding some things Oliver Linehan had sent me an email about, some things I've read in a comment, but I didn't get to those, and that's just going to have to be okay. So, again, I wish you all a very fond and fair adieu. And
well, congratulations on saving another life.
Thank you. I do it every time I wear a mask out. I save lives.
It's becoming a nightly occurrence for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And have a pleasant evening. And Spencer Jones, I'll see you next live stream, okay? Bye, Taylor.
Later.